The auctioneer's voice echoed through the dusty barn, dry and tired like the voices of those who'd been calling out bids for hours. One by one, cattle and pigs disappeared through the gate, claimed by farmers and locals ready to bring home their livestock. Then, something unusual shuffled into the clearing, something nobody expected. It wasn't a cow or a pig. It was a dog, not just any dog, but a scruffy, limping old hound, his fur patchy and tangled, one ear torn, and eyes dull as though the world had long stopped caring about him. The crowd's murmurs rose and fell like waves. Laughter rippled from a group of boys near the fence. "Looks like he lost a fight with a lawnmower," one joked. Another dared, $10 if someone puts him out of his misery. But no one stepped forward. The auctioneer sighed and called out, "One old hound, no papers, no history, starting at $5. The silence that followed was thick, uncomfortable. Then, from the back, barely tall enough to see over the yaw rail, a small voice broke through. "I'll take him." Heads turned, eyes fixed on the boy standing there, a 9-year-old in a red hoodie, clutching a crumpled $5 bill in his small hand. The laughter stopped. The adults exchanged skeptical looks. Some whispered, "What a waste of money," while others just shook their heads. But the boy stood firm, his eyes never leaving the limping dog. The dog was no stranger to hardship. His name had once been Benny, a name spoken with love and laughter in a warm home long ago. Benny was a clever dog, the kind that could open gates. With his paw, fetch the newspaper and wag his tail so hard it looked like he might take off flying. His family had adored him, but life had turned cruel. The boy who once cared for Benny grew sick, then disappeared from his life, leaving Benny behind to face loneliness, pain, and neglect. Benny's days passed in a noisy shelter filled with barking dogs and cold, unfamiliar smells. His tail still wagged when someone passed, but hope grew dimmer with every day that no one chose him. Eventually, a man took Benny home, but love was not part of that picture. Chained outside in rain or shine, Benny's spirit faded along with his health. When his leg became injured, no one cared to help, and so Benny found himself at the auction, another forgotten piece to be sold. But the boy, Eli, didn't see a broken dog. He saw a friend, a kindred spirit who, like him, might be tired and scared, but still worthy of love. Walking Benny home, Eli kept his grip loose on the leash, careful not to frighten him. Their neighbors watched with judgment, whispering about the poor boy and the messy dog. But Eli didn't care what they thought. At home, his father eyed the dog warily but said nothing as Eli made a soft bed in the barn corner. For days, Eli read stories to Benny, spoke in whispers, and left out warm food. Benny didn't trust at first. He flinched at sudden sounds, stayed frozen in corners, and never barked. Slowly, though, something began to change. Benny took food from Eli's hand. He followed Eli's steps with a quiet limp. And little by little, he began to feel hope again. Then came the day that would change everything. While exploring the woods, behind the farm, Eli fell through a rotten floorboard in an old shed. Pinned and scared, he called out for help. For the first time in weeks, Benny barked, a sharp, urgent sound that carried through the trees. Running to find Eli, Benny's barking alerted Eli's father, who came rushing just in time to rescue his son. The story of the rejected dog who saved a boy spread quickly. Photos shared on the community board showed Benny and Eli muddy and tired, but alive. People who had once whispered now told a different tale, a story of courage, friendship, and second chances. But even with all the attention, Benny's past was still a shadow, and Eli's fight for acceptance was just beginning. Why did Eli choose Benny? And what challenges awaited them both as they faced a world that often sees only scars and not the hearts beneath? Their journey had only just begun. Eli watched Benny's tired eyes as the afternoon sun dipped behind the trees, casting long shadows across the barn floor. The quiet between them was heavy but somehow comforting. For the first time in a long while, Eli felt like he wasn't alone. Benny, with his uneven limp and cautious gaze, had become a part of Eli's world. A world where kindness was scarce, and trust even scarcer. But that world outside the barn was complicated. full of whispers and sideways glances that followed them everywhere they went. At school, Eli's classmates noticed the dog trailing behind him, the patchy fur and the constant limp drawing sneers and snickers. Some called Benny the broken dog. Others laughed behind Eli's back, questioning why he would want such a scruffy old creature. It wasn't just the kids. Even some adults in town seemed to believe Benny was more trouble than he was worth. The quiet disapproval weighed on Eli, but he clung to the promise he had made. No matter what anyone said, Benny deserved a chance. Benny's past wasn't just marked by neglect. It was woven with pain and loss that no dog should have to bear. Eli learned from old neighbors and from watching the shelter workers that Benny once belonged to a family not far from town. The boy who loved him had fallen sick and had to leave, and Benny was left behind, forgotten like an old toy no one wanted anymore. That made Eli's heart ache. He understood what it felt like to be left behind, even by the people who were supposed to care the most. But Eli's own home wasn't a refuge from hardship. His father, a quiet man worn thin by long days on the farm, struggled to balance work and worry. Since Eli's mother had passed away 2 years ago, the house felt emptier than ever. The farm was all they had left, and Eli knew his dad wished things were easier for both of them. Bringing Benny into their lives wasn't something his father had wanted, especially with the rumors spreading, the judgment that seemed to seep into every conversation at the market or the grocery store. Eli could see the tension every time. His father's eyes met Benny's. His dad never said it out loud, but Eli sensed the worry behind the stern looks. Benny was a reminder of things they couldn't control, things that could break them again if they weren't careful. Yet Eli refused to let Benny go. He knew deep down that Benny wasn't just a dog. He was a symbol of hope, of resilience, and maybe even a little bit of healing. The small town they lived in was a place where everyone knew each other's stories, but some stories were easier to accept than others. People whispered about Eli and his dog, about the boy who saved a dog nobody else wanted. Some saw it as foolishness, others as an act of bravery, but not everyone was kind. One afternoon, as Eli and Benny walked home along the gravel road, a group of teenagers blocked their path. They laughed cruelly, throwing stones just wide enough to scare Benny but never to hurt him. "Why do you keep that thing?" "It's just a broken mutt," one sneered. Eli's heart pounded, but he stood tall. "He's my friend." The boy's laughter turned sharp, but before the situation could escalate, a voice called out from the edge of the road. It was Mrs. Turner, the kindly woman who ran the local animal shelter. She had heard about Benny's story and had quietly been watching from afar. "Leave them be," she said firmly. "That dog saved a boy's life, more than some of you could ever do." The teenagers grumbled but scattered, leaving Eli and Benny alone once again. But the encounter was a harsh reminder. Acceptance wouldn't come easily. At the shelter, Mrs. Turner invited Eli to visit, to learn more about dogs like Benny, about healing and second chances. Eli eagerly accepted. The shelter was a different world, noisy, chaotic, but full of stories of survival and hope. Each dog there had scars, visible or hidden, and each one was waiting for someone to believe in them. One dog, a young Labrador named Daisy, caught Eli's eye. She was bright and energetic, but had been abandoned twice. Watching Daisy and Benny, Eli saw the wide range of what it meant to be lost and found. He realized his journey with Benny was just one thread in a larger tapestry of broken lives seeking healing. Back at home, tension grew as winter approached. Benny's limp worsened, and Eli worried the old dog was in pain. His father finally agreed to take Benny to the vet, but the cost was more than Eli had hoped. Money was tight, and the farm demanded every cent they had. Eli's heart clenched, knowing that sometimes love wasn't enough to fix everything. Meanwhile, whispers in town shifted again when a local news crew showed interest in Benny's story. They wanted to highlight the dog who had saved a boy, to tell a story of hope and friendship. Eli's father hesitated, unsure about putting their private struggles on display, but Eli saw the chance for Benny, and for himself, to be seen in a new light. Yet beneath the hope, the threat of loss loomed. Benny's health declined, and, Eli's fears deepened. Would the dog who had given him a reason to hope slip away? Would the town's judgment crush the fragile bond they had built? And what would it mean for Eli if Benny was gone? As winter's chill settled, the stage was set for a moment that would test courage, love, and the power of second chances. Eli and Benny's story was far from over. In fact, the hardest part was yet to come. Winter deepened, and with it, Benny's limp worsened. The once lively spark in his eyes grew dim, and Eli could feel the weight of every slow step the dog took. Each morning Eli waited anxiously for his father's return from the vet, hoping for good news but bracing for the worst. The vet's office smelled of antiseptic and hope, but also of uncertainty. When Eli's father finally came home, his face was drawn, but he forced a smile for Eli's sake. "The vet says Benny needs surgery," he said quietly. "It won't be cheap, but it could make him walk right again." Eli's heart leapt and sank at the same time. He wanted to believe. This was the miracle Benny deserved, but he knew money was tight. The farm was struggling through the cold months, and every dollar was precious. "We'll find a way," Eli said, voice steady, though his insides twisted. "Benny's done so much for me. He's worth it." News of Benny's upcoming surgery spread through town. The same people who had whispered and judged now watched closely. Some offered quiet support, others stayed distant, unsure what to make of the boy and his scruffy dog. Yet a few surprising faces showed up at the farm one chilly afternoon. Neighbors bringing homemade meals, a local shopkeeper offering a discount on supplies, and even some of the teenagers who had mocked Benny before, now offering hesitant smiles. The day of the surgery arrived with biting cold and gray skies. Eli sat in the waiting room, clutching a small charm his mother had given him, a symbol of hope and protection. Hours passed, and every sound made Eli's heart jump. Finally, the vet came out, wiping his hands on a towel. "The surgery went well," he said, smiling softly. "Benny's a fighter. With rest and care, he'll walk better than he has in a long time." Relief flooded through Eli, tears stinging his eyes. Benny was more than just a dog. He was a symbol of resilience, of second chances that sometimes come from the most unexpected places. When Benny returned home, his steps were slow but steady. Eli stayed by his side, helping him adjust, whispering encouragement as if the dog could understand every word. Days turned into weeks, and Benny grew stronger, his tail wagging a little more each day. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Eli's father finally spoke about the future. "You did good, son, bringing Benny home. It wasn't just about saving a dog. You saved yourself, too." Eli nodded, understanding in a way he never had before. Benny wasn't just a pet. He was family. Their bond had healed old wounds and built something new, a quiet kind of hope that neither time nor hardship could break. Word of Benny's story traveled beyond the small town. The local news featured Eli and his dog, sharing a story of courage, love, and the power of never giving up on someone, no matter how broken they seem. The post that started it all had sparked something bigger, a reminder that kindness can change lives, that every soul deserves a second chance. Eli learned that day that being brave wasn't about fighting everyone else's battles. It was about believing in those who needed it most, even if it was a scruffy dog with a limp and no history. Benny had been rejected, forgotten, and left behind, but he found a home where love was the only thing that mattered. And as they sat together in the quiet barn, the world outside seemed a little kinder, a little softer. Benny rested his head on Eli's knee, eyes shining with trust and something like gratitude. In the end, it wasn't just the boy who saved the dog. The dog saved the boy too. Sometimes the ones we least expect turn out to be the greatest heroes. And sometimes a simple act of love is all it takes to rewrite a story, one step at a time.